This podcast is powered by Pelotonia. To learn more about our goaltend cancer, visit pelotonia.org or see the link in the show notes.
I think about community from that perspective. It's connectedness and feeling as though you're part of something that's bigger than just you.
How can you just expand this community? And I think it does get back to Julie's point around this connectivity. You know, we're all here together.
Welcome to One Goal, a podcast from Pelotonia. We're a community dedicated to funding innovative cancer research through a 3-day experience of cycling and volunteering. I'm your host and Chief Operating Officer of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar. Your journey with us to the finish line begins now. Pelotonia is powered by an amazing community, and it's through research that we will see an end to cancer. We want to thank our major funding partners: the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. Our community is full of incredible leaders, all dedicated to our one goal. We're lucky to have 10 of those amazing community members serve on our board of directors at Pelotonia. Our 2 newest additions to the Pelotonia board shared their own stories with us for this podcast: Julie Sloat from AEP and Victor Crawford from Cardinal Health. They both have incredible resumes, work for Pelotonia funding partners, and are simply wonderful people. They are also deeply connected to our work at Pelotonia, both being cancer survivors themselves. Victor has overcome colon cancer, and Julie beat breast cancer. We'll kick this interview off with Julie as we get to know them both in this episode titled Leading by Serving.
I am an Ohioan, so I am a total Buckeye. Grew up in Canton, Ohio, and actually migrated to Columbus as I attended The Ohio State University. And I after graduation, I was fortunate enough to essentially go back to graduate school and then find employment with American Electric Power. Worked in our regulatory services group for a handful of years, came back to finance, and then they asked me to go run the utility company. So I was president and COO for AEP Ohio for a handful of years, and now I'm back in the finance organization. So my alarm usually goes off around 4 a.m., and I always have it set to NPR. And at that point, it's the BBC News that's on because it's so early. And I'm hard pressed to find a day that the first story I hear somehow doesn't impact or relate to my business. That's how big this business is, because it's energy, right? It's electricity, and it's global, and you need it, right? It makes life possible. So I love it. It makes my world bigger, and it's just an absolute privilege to be here. And I've had the opportunity to be a part of the AEP Peloton for the last several years, riding the last several years. This year obviously was a little different because I had my Pelotonia, right? So I changed it up a little bit, but looking forward to getting to it, back to it in more traditional sense, hopefully next year if we get past some of this COVID stuff.
Victor, so we are super happy to have you on the podcast. You are our newest board member, which we are thrilled to have you on the board. And so welcome, and would love for you to share your journey and how you've ended up with one of our other funding partners, Cardinal Health.
Originally from Detroit, Michigan. So I'm one of those, other guys from Michigan, but, grew up playing sports all my life. And I think one of the things my parents always did for me was that if I ever got less, if I got a C or less on my report card, I couldn't play the next sport. So that kind of motivated me through school. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go on to college and play college football. I played at Boston College. And, I think my high spot, I got to play with a little guy named Doug Flutie, who won the Heisman Trophy. Cool. After graduating, I actually tried to extend my playing career and went out to Chicago, and they told me I was damaged goods. So I became an accountant. I started my career with Price Waterhouse in the Boston office. But leaving Price Waterhouse and going to work for a company called Federal Mogul as their director of internal audit. And I got recruited to a little company called Pepsi. And I got my first general manager assignment actually running Northeast Ohio. So I was based in Cleveland, Twinsburg area, but I lived in Strongsville. So met my wife who lived in Shaker Heights, and she's actually an Ohio State grad. I had the opportunity to retire in my early 50s. But as life would have it, I have 6 daughters. So I couldn't stay retired, just given the fact that, seemed like the FedEx and the UPS truck was showing up at my house with some package every day. Somebody had to get back to work and pay for it. So I am just happy to be here at Cardinal. And one of the reasons why I'm here is that we have such a strong culture. I think at the end of everything that we do, we understand there's a patient. And having been a patient, knowing patients, having family members that have been patients, we know that we're essential to care. And I'm just really proud to be able to represent this organization. I haven't had a chance to ride in Pelotonia, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually going to go out and I'm going to invest in a new bike because I've got like one of these mountain bikes. I need something a little lighter that can
get up the hills.
Yeah, get up the hills and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I have continued to support our team here. And I really appreciate all the work that Cardinal's done to support Pelotonia. So I'm looking forward to it.
You were both asked to be on the Pelotonia board this year. Julie earlier in the year and Victor more recently. And I'd love to hear from your point of view what that was like, sort of being asked to join a board of, Julie, something you've participated in for a long time, and then have gone through a cancer experience at a hospital where, our organization is funding research directly at. Yeah,
no, I was thrilled. Actually, I couldn't believe it. I thought for sure there'd be a fist fight to have inside my organization to be able to step onto the board. Our Peloton is lovely, and it's just a magical time for us every time we have this opportunity to get together, right? And obviously this year's a little different, but I was thrilled. And you're right. And so I guess from my perspective, I've always ridden, right? And so that's been normal for me, and that's something I do every year. So to have that perspective, I think enriches the conversation. I think most people around the table at the board have ridden, and so obviously I knew Doug, and I would have Doug and team come over to our offices on a frequent basis as we were trying to do our fundraising, et cetera. So it was very comfortable for me, and it as a result of the cancer experience makes it very much more personal.
Victor, what about you? I think we announced you joining the board about a month and a half ago, which we were really excited to have someone from Cardinal join the board.
Doug actually came and was our keynote speaker at one of our graduations for one of our leadership programs here at Cardinal. So I was sitting there because I'm an executive sponsor for one of the programs, and I'm sitting here and he told his story. And I felt moved after the program was over to go up, introduce myself to him, shared with him that I was a survivor as well. And we just kind of hit it off. And I think I got a note from him. He's good at writing notes. And so I got a handwritten card from him. And ultimately, my boss came and said, hey, would you be interested in joining the Pelotonia board? I think, Mike Kaufman, our CEO, had a conversation with Doug. And I said, absolutely. And I would tell you, as busy as we are as executives, you really have to be mindful for how you spend your time, outside of work and away from your family. And so I was just blessed to be able to be asked and to be able to come onto the board. I actually sit on the Hershey board, which I guess candy and bike riding probably don't go together. But the Hershey board actually supports the Milton Hershey School, which supports, underprivileged kids. And then I had this opportunity to participate on the Pelotonian board that helped support cancer research. I can't think of any other places I would want to spend my time away from my family and away from my job.
I'd love for each of you to share sort of your own cancer journeys and your cancer stories. I know both of you mark yourselves as cancer survivors, like I do myself. It is a club you never want to be in, but something you're also very proud of. And I think Julie would love to hear your story first, and then Victor will transition to you.
Yeah, I will never forget it. The initial concern comes, when you get this test result back that something looks suspect, right? And so then that starts all these other activities. So right there, that's obviously concern number one, because now do I have this or do I not, right? So then you go through a biopsy process, at least I did. And then that took, it was a few weeks after to get all that set up between, hey, you have a bad screening, to, okay, let's go ahead and extract some of this and see what the situation is. And then you got a little bit of a wait time after that. And I remember I was waiting for my biopsy results, and I had just come home. I was traveling for business. I literally pulled into my garage and shut the garage door, and my phone rang in my car. And it was the James, and the nurse on Dr. Farr's team, first thing she asked me is, are you in a safe place? Can you talk? And at that point, it's hard to hear anything else. You can't hear anything else. So I tried to take notes because I have my bag sitting next to me, and as best I could anyway. So I don't think I'll ever, I know I won't forget that. So that was, I call it mid-September, and I'd had an issue with my biopsy created a hematoma and all this other junk. So I had some other physical things I had to deal with before I could even have surgery. And then that's the next step, right? So I went to have surgery. I remember it was October 14th. And, then I had to wait to see what the results were from the surgery. Did you get it all? Right. And were my lymph nodes clear? Those types of things. Right. So I had to wait for those words of, in this case, goodness. So those came a couple days later. Aside from a couple of scares here in the years after, been all clear. So this actually last October 14th was my 5-year anniversary of being.
Oh, that's here. Amazing.
Yeah. So it's huge.
It's a big milestone.
It rocks your world.
Yeah. I will never forget that moment myself.
And it's funny because even today I think, well, gosh, did that happen? Did that really happen? But then I think back to all the sleepless nights. Yeah, it definitely happened. But that was, I think, the wonderful thing about the James. So not only did I get to have my care literally right down the street, Dr. Farr was my surgeon. I love him. I got the best care from him. What I particularly appreciated about the James was not only the technology and the care being fabulous, but they kept my life on track as much as they possibly could. And I remember when I was going through my radiation treatments, I had to go every day. So I'd go first thing in the morning and then I'd buzz into work. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people had no idea at work that I was even going through this, right? So I kind of kept it as normal as I possibly could. And I remember one day I'd come in and I said, hey, look, can you guys, is there any chance you could do me 15 minutes early? Because the schedule for radiation is very, tick-tock, because they're trying to get everybody through. I said, can you get me in a little earlier tomorrow, 15 minutes earlier? They're like, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm catching a flight because I'm going to go run a half marathon and then I'll be right back. And, but they did it. And they were phenomenal.
Victor, would love to hear sort of your cancer journey as well. Sort of when it happened, when you were diagnosed.
Yeah, it was, I think about it. It was actually right after, I had another situation, a medical situation where I told you I'd retired from Pepsi. And luckily it was kind of a blessing in disguise. I started feeling real sick. I got actually diagnosed before I got diagnosed for cancer with an autoimmune disease.
Okay.
That very, very rare. So I was in and out the hospital for literally 4 months. Found out I was allergic to sulfur-based medicines and ended up in a burn unit only because of the reaction that it gave me. And so I was fortunate enough to kind of work myself through that. Started back working, and the next year, same thing, during my annual physical, I had an elevation in my PSA number, and I get my PSA number, back. And, the good news is we were able to kind of track, multiple years in terms of what that figure was. And so, it was a very low number and it jumped up. And so he said, this is not good. So you need to go see a urologist. And so now, between the time of him telling me I need to go see a urologist, finding out kind of what's going on. So now I'm kind of doing some research. What does all of this mean? Having the, getting the biopsy done, which wasn't wasn't a pleasant situation whatsoever.
No, I cannot imagine.
Yeah. And then waiting for the results of the biopsy. And it was probably about a week because, I was in New York at the time working for Pepsi, and the results of the biopsy had to go actually to Johns Hopkins to get a confirmatory reading. And so you're waiting, and so fortunate enough when they came back and kind of gave me my Gleason score, good news is it was low enough, and where they found the cancer was in a place where I had at least the opportunity to look at some options in terms of treatment. So from the time I actually got diagnosed was probably in May of 2013. And I actually didn't get the procedure done until probably February because I had an opportunity to talk to multiple doctors. But during that time, it actually kind of continued to give me a little bit more confidence about the ability to have a full recovery from this. So, I would say that kind of took out some of the anxiety as I continued to talk to these specialists at the Cleveland Clinic, Mayo, Mass General, and then ultimately at Johns Hopkins. And so through just the ability to just get some really, really great care and some second and third opinions, kind of took away a little bit of the anxiety, but still, when you talk about prostate cancer, it does, when you have a prostatectomy, it has some lasting effects on your lifestyle. That was probably the biggest challenge. Just, what to expect after that,
Yep.
In terms of just your lifestyle. But as I kind of worked myself through the treatment process and the recovery process, I really thought about what does significance mean moving forward in my life. And so, it was a really good reflection point for me. And again, probably one of the reasons why I'm here at Cardinal is because what we do does touch all the patients. I come to find out we have a nuclear pharmaceutical business. And if you think about diagnosing cancer, we are actually the ones that make the radioactive doses that assist physicians in being able to diagnose different tumors. So I was a benefactor of Cardinal Health even before I came to work here.
And so sort of fast forward a little bit after your surgery, do you remember when you got the thumbs up? We feel like we got it all. We feel like there's no evidence of disease. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, no, it was, good news was right after the surgery, probably about a month after, I got some more blood work done, and, my PSA number was, I really didn't have one, and that was a good thing.
Yep.
So again, we continue to monitor that. I get blood work pulled, twice a year, every 6 months pretty much now. So it's something that we continue to keep an eye on. And so, I unfortunately, there is always a little bit of anxiety, waiting for that test result to come back and making sure that it stays very, very low. So I've been blessed so far, and just will continue to pray for health going forward.
I do want to touch on, Julie, your Pelotonia this year. I know that it involved a certain breakfast item, although I don't know if it should be labeled just breakfast item. I think it could be an all-day item. I also know you have a favorite place, which I, personally might debate if that is at the top of the list or not. But would love for you to share your Pelotonia and sort of the story behind why that was so fun for you.
Yeah, no, this year I decided to switch it up given the circumstances. So I mapped a little more than 15-mile loop that I was going to run, and I was able to kind of run past my favorite donut shops, do my donut run, right? I called it my donut run, and I was able to then essentially end my donut run at my favorite breakfast place, which has fabulous donuts, called the DK Diner in Grandview. So I live in Upper Arlington, and I started my route from a house and ran to the Goodie Shop at Tremont Center. If any,
this is Goodie Shop's at the top of my list.
No, it's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
So I ran north, right? So I ran north to the Goodie Shop, and then I ran up to Honey Dip, then ran down Henderson Road, or Henderson and Kenny, and ran down Henderson Road over to the trail, and then was able to get past Buckeye Donuts on campus, and then back over to Grandview, because the Buckeye Donuts is on High Street, if you're familiar with that. Okay. Yep. Then back over to Grandview where the DK Diner is. And I would say donuts are an all-day food.
Me too,
and
I would say.
I love them. I love them. I can't remember not loving them. Okay. And here's why it was special to me, though. When I was actually going through my radiation treatments at the James, I would get through my week, right? So I'd get to Friday. And my treat to myself was, before I'd come into the office, I would hit the DK Diner and get a donut. And then I would bring that in to the office. So that was my treat. Yeah. And so it was like the celebration thing. I got through the week. And so here I go. And so interestingly, so I will actually do that tomorrow too. So I'm going to go do a long run tomorrow morning, and then I'll hit the DK Diner and have a donut. So it's this thing now that I do. And it was just a really fun way to just appreciate the ability to eat a lot of donuts, and just to be alive, and to run around my favorite university campus, and go to my favorite donut shops.
I mean, did you eat at every stop?
No, I wouldn't been able to keep it down, I don't think. Yeah, okay. But when you're eating that many donuts, you get the furnace has got to burn hot to burn that stuff off, right? Yeah. So I got miles in to be able to justify the donut.
The question I want to sort of end on and have each of you answer really relates to something that is most core to Pelotonia, which is our community. And, you have both been a part of many communities over the course of your lives. And I'm curious what, just when you hear the word community, what it means to you.
I don't think it has geographical boundaries. I think about, even before I got diagnosed with prostate cancer, one of my college roommates had it and one of my best friends had it. So one lives in, Houston, Texas, one lives in, Chicago, Illinois. And so as I think about that community, I think about that community being of survivors and potential survivors or future survivors, put it that way. So I would really, as a board member, I really look forward to hopefully expanding the geographical community of Pelotonia. How can you just expand this community? We're all here together. I think we all want the same thing for each other. We want hopefully prosperity. And when I think about prosperity, it's not about wealth, it's about health. And so how do we actually extend that? Throughout the geographies it's how I think about the community.
I guess what immediately springs to mind is connection and connectedness. It's interesting as we go through this situation where we can't physically be together as we normally would. It's been very challenging, right? Difficult. But on some aspects, I think that, and I think about this not only from my own family, but I think about it from my work family too. I think in many respects, it's actually made us closer, which is odd. It's not necessarily intuitive for me, at least. So I think about community from that perspective. It's connectedness and feeling as though you're part of something that's bigger than just you. And that is so important. And I know everyone keeps saying we're all in this together, but we really are all in this together, more so than ever. So if there's a silver lining to this situation, this pandemic that we're trying to navigate, it might be exactly that, community.
Thanks to Julie and Victor for sharing their journeys with us today and for serving on our board. And special shout out to the teams at AEP and Cardinal Health for their dedication to our one goal. We also want to recognize our major funding partners for making all of this possible: the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L. Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. On the next episode of One Goal.
And that's what one of the things we want to achieve in the long run too, is that Columbus becomes synonymous with Austin and South by. And, people, when they say Columbus, they're like, oh, isn't that where RTRX and Pelotonia happen? And you say yes. And people want to be there. And it's known that like the next big idea could come from there.
You've been listening to One Goal, a podcast from Pelotonia. Season 2 will be hosted by me, cancer survivor and chief operating officer of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar, with interview and production scheduling by our marketing and communications team duo, Emily Smith and Gabby Blauer. Produced, mixed, and sound designed at the studios of Wessler Media by Vince Tornero. Additional mastering by Joey Gerwin at Oranjudio. Special thank you to all of our guests for being so open and willing to share their stories. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as that will help others hear these empowering journeys. If you're curious about joining the Pelotonia community and making an impact on cancer research, please see the link in the episode notes or visit pelotonia.org. That's pelotonia.org.